Good. You guys ready? I'm gonna go ahead and we'll see if we finish well. All right, being 1831 military time, as the vice chairman, I'm going to declare the meeting in order for the first meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission for Garden City in 2024. And first thing I'll do, for the record, notice that present are Commissioners Brown and Montoya here presently here, and Commissioner Shepherd is on there with Zoom, and Commissioner Wild is absent. But I understand that he probably will be joining, so we're not sure where. And once he does that, we'll just make record of it. So let's have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Now, and it's one too fancy of a ceremony, but I've been informed that the mayor has appointed, and there's Commissioner Wild. Excellent. So you can show that the three of us are present here, and Commissioner Shepherd's on Zoom. I've been informed by the mayor that he has appointed Commissioner Montoya as the new chairman for a year, and he's reappointed me as the vice chairman. And so I'm playing a little ceremony. I'm gonna give this to you, and I'm gonna move over there, and you're in charge. All right, thank you. And congratulations.
We're gonna double your pay.
All right.
You get 2 bottles of water when you're done.
He brings his own bottle.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Brown. Also like to thank former Chairman Rasmussen for his leadership. It was an excellent opportunity to be able to serve under him. Appreciate it. Commissioner Brown, Wild, Shepherd for working with me over the past couple of years, and look forward to the opportunity, and of course to the exceptional staff that we have helping us every month. So thank you very much. All right, on to the agenda. So we have the changes to the agenda action item sub FY 2022-004 Elle Estates, move to a date certain of February 21st, 2024. Aside from that change, staff, are there any other changes to the agenda?
Chairman, none by staff.
All right, thank you. Being no changes, this commission provides for a public hearing for quasi judicial administrative land use decisions, appeals, and legislative actions specific to land use regulations. With that, we will move on to the consent agenda, of which we have 2 items, and moving the as SUB FY 2022-0004 onto the consent agenda. We use a consent agenda, which means that an applicant agrees to the staff report. If there is no public opposition, then an item can be placed on the consent agenda. All items placed on the consent agenda will be approved with one motion without further consent. Currently, we have the meeting minutes from the November 15th, 2023 meeting, as well as the SUB FY 2022-004. It looks like we may be able to move an additional item onto the consent agenda, being CUP FY 2024-0001. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to give public testimony on that item? All right, seeing none, is the applicant present? All right, thank you. Can you please state your name for the record? Name and address. And your address, please?
2570 South Longmont Street, Boise, Idaho, 8370.
Thank you. And have you had an opportunity to review the staff report, the findings of fact, conclusion of law, and draft decision documents, including the conditions of approval?
I have.
And do you agree and consent to these documents in the affirmative, including all conditions of approval? All right, thank you. Does staff or any member of the commission have any reason that they feel this item should be heard?
How for me?
No.
No.
All right, thank you. With that, we can move the item onto the consent agenda. With that being the items for the consent agenda, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair. I move approval of the consent agenda consisting of the minutes from the November 15, 2023 meeting, as well as SUB FY 2022-4, and also in the new business agenda items, CUP FY 24-1.
I would second.
We have a motion and a second. With all those in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. The ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Do we need to say?
Nope.
We love having an audience.
A little lights out there to stay, you know. We appreciate that. Yeah, thanks, good.
Thank you. All right, moving to the regular agenda for the public hearing. The format for the public hearing will follow the following procedures for each application. The application is still standing is CUP FY 2024-0002. Applicant Richard Sullivan with SRS Distribution Heritage Pool Supply is proposing warehouse and storage, wholesale of pool supplies and outdoor storage at 203 West 43rd Street, 200 West 42nd Street. So what we'll do is we'll have a brief intro or a presentation by the applicant. City will then present its report. We'll have a public hearing and then rebuttal testimony from the applicant, close the public hearing, and then have a discussion amongst members. I would like to disclose that I do have a relationship with Richard Sullivan and SRS Distribution. I currently am working on a development in Lake Fork where SRS Distribution is a tenant, and I've been working with Richard Sullivan on that project.
Chairman, would it be accurate to say that you would not have financial, any vested financial interest in this matter?
That's correct. I have no interest in this property or project at all.
Thank you.
All right, with that, if you wouldn't mind coming up to the podium and stating your name and address, and you'll have 15 minutes to provide us with the application.
Hello, my name is Emily Stewart. I'm here on behalf of Richard Sullivan and SRS to present to you the project we are looking to propose. The property consists of 3 parcels located and bound by West 43rd Street, West Ustick Avenue, and West 42nd Street. There is an existing building located on West 43rd Street, an existing vacant warehouse, and 2 vacant parcels fronting on West 42nd Street. The applicant is proposing the use of warehouse storage and accessory outdoor storage on these 3 parcels. The property is zoned C2 commercial, and adjacent properties are also zoned C2 commercial. The applicant is looking to propose a screen fence to propose around the outdoor storage and some landscaping along the adjacent mobile home community and along the West 42nd Street frontage. The applicant has requested a waiver for the sidewalk on West 42nd Street due to the lack of pedestrian and vehicular connectivity through to from 42nd Street to West Ustick Road. And the applicant had also requested the use of chain link fence for screening. I understand that's prohibited, but the applicant would like to, that is the most safe and secure method for storing or to surround their products. So they would like to propose a chain link fence with a decorative fence in front of it. If they would be permitted. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have some questions.
Okay.
So actually if I follow it correctly, then you're requesting 2 waivers in effect. One of them that you could leave the chain link fences up there, but you would put some kind of a decorative fence in front of it.
The applicant would propose removing all the existing chain link fence and putting up new fencing along the whole outdoor storage area.
Oh, so you would replace all of the chain link fencing.
Right.
Thank you. So that you're not any longer requesting, so that one, now the second one. In the event that we didn't waive this requirement for the sidewalk that's on 42nd Street,
Right.
I understand there's a sidewalk already on 43rd Street, which is adequate. What is your assessment of the impact of that to your project?
If the applicant would be willing to put it in, but they didn't see the need to have pedestrian connectivity in that location because it goes to a retaining wall. There is no access, or there's no way for a pedestrian to get from West 42nd Street through up to 6th Street.
So in the event that we weren't, then you're saying that you'd be willing to install the sidewalk.
Correct. There are some utilities in that location that we would have to work around. There's an irrigation line and fire hydrant and a telephone pole, several telephone poles along the frontage. So I don't know if we would need to make modifications to the sidewalk location and shift it back if you guys want the sidewalk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all the question I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the applicant.
Commissioner Shepherd?
You mentioned a screened fence. Well, you mentioned putting up a chain link fence with decorative fencing in front of it. Can you describe to me what that looks like? What kind of fencing you're talking about?
The decorative fence would most likely be a vinyl, solid vinyl fence.
Thank you. I have another question for you too. Are large trucks expected to access that area? I had some questions around like the outside activity that would be there.
The deliveries were made primarily through West 43rd Street and then unloaded there. And then the the products will be then taken, most of the products are on pallets. So they would be then taken via the pallet lifter to the outdoor storage area during business hours.
Okay, thank you. Those are all of my questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Shepherd. Any other questions for the applicant?
No.
Commissioner
Mr.
Brown?
Chairman.
Yep.
I apologize. I intended to ask this and I forgot it, but it reminded. There's also a requirement in there for some trees on 42nd Street. Five trees on 42nd Street.
Yes, the applicant's willing to install all required landscaping.
Even if if we approve the sidewalk waiver, you would still be, if we wanted to remain with the trees along that road. You'd be willing to do that.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Brown, just one question for me. So you've reviewed the conditions. What I'm hearing you say is, it sounds like you're okay with the conditions. There's really only two that you have any requests on, one being not having to do the sidewalk, but you'd be willing to if we enforced it, and the other is just allowing you to put up a decorative fence in front of the chain link.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Brown?
Then that prompted another question. I apologize, but what is the impact if we said, no, we still want the chain link fence taken down and you just got along with the vinyl fence? Is there any reason why you think that you need the chain link as well as a decorative fence?
The applicant prefers the chain link for security purposes. Thinks it's, provides better security. But if you said no, the applicant would provide just the vinyl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Commissioner Brown. All right, thank you very much. And you will have an opportunity after the public hearing for any rebuttal.
Mr. Chair, I have one more question for the applicant if we're still on the applicants.
Sure, Commissioner Shepherd.
Thank you. It just came up about the fencing. So when you talk about the security of the chain link fencing, I'm just curious, are you thinking about putting barbed wire over it?
No, there'll be no barbed wire. It's just a 6-foot high chain link fence and then a 6-foot high vinyl fence in front.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Shepherd.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Give me a second while I pull up some Google imagery. Just to have for reference. I'm specifically pulling up the site on 42nd Street since this is the location where the streetscape and fencing conversation is primarily involved. This street view that I am showing is not current. There has since been removal of vegetation and the homes that is showing on the screen right now. But as you are well aware of, this is conditional use permit fiscal year 2024-0002. It is a requested use for warehouse and storage, wholesale, which is defined in our Garden City Code. It is not to be confused with the specific use in code which is storage, because storage facility and yard is not a permitted use within the C2 zoning district, whereas the warehouse and storage is a conditional use in the C2 zoning district. The site consists of 3 different parcels. The first being at 203 West 43rd and the other two being 200 West 42nd and North 42nd Street. They're all zoned in the C2 zoning district. The application has a drafted decision document that has many different drafted conditions in the approval to make sure that the application is code compliant. But there are a few items that staff would like to discuss here tonight, specifically regarding the sidewalk and landscaping, or I'll refer to it as the streetscape, fencing on the site, which is current and proposed, as well as the term outdoor activity, which is defined in that 8(2)(c) 45 section of code. All the conditions drafted in that decision document have been drafted so that the improvements are made prior to the occupancy permit being granted. That is not to say that a surety bond cannot be obtained later in the process. We're still waiting on comments from ACHD regarding the right-of-way improvements on both 43rd, but more specifically 42nd Street. And we're also waiting comments on the Fairview Acres lateral regarding their irrigation line there on 42nd Street. In the street view that I am currently presenting, you can see their irrigation boxes. There's one where my mouse is in between the two parcels on 42nd, and then one closer to that retaining wall to the south. Both of these agencies and their comments are important in understanding where a potential sidewalk can go, as well as where the potential landscaping, specifically those class 2 and 3 trees, can be placed. Code requires that there is a detached sidewalk along 42nd Street, as well as the installation of curb and gutter, with a 6 or 8 foot wide landscape buffer for those street trees, which might conflict with that irrigation line. And we're not sure if ACHD is going to grant permission for the sidewalk within 42nd Street. However, that is pretty standard procedure. Garden City also has a sidewalk policy, which allows for the commission to grant sidewalk waivers based off of a case-by-case basis. And that's if the applicant has submitted a sidewalk waiver request. As of tonight's comments per the applicant and conversations that staff has had with the applicant, they are requesting a waiver. However, that official submittal was not given to staff. The commission may consider or may not consider the lack of sidewalk on adjacent properties, loss of parking or storage area, or just simple desire of the applicant or property owner to not have a sidewalk when making their decision to grant the sidewalk waiver. However, no new sidewalk is required when a property is at a dead end, where there is no possibility for future extension of a roadway and is not part of an existing or planned connection to the greenbelt, a pathway, or part of a cul-de-sac, or amenity that may be utilized by the public. Staff would like to note that while 42nd Street is technically a dead end as of right now, so are most of those streets to the south of Chinden, all ending in west, some number. So West 42nd, West 41st, and so on and so forth. Let's see. Conditions have been drafted to require that the streetscape be installed, including the detached sidewalk and 5 class 2 or 3 street trees. You can see that in the decision document. However, if the commission were to grant a sidewalk waiver, you would need to make specific conditions regarding that here tonight. Additionally, gardens, or as far as purpose and function goes for this application, Garden City Code 82C 45 states that, quote, outside activity areas shall be located a minimum of 300 feet from any property line adjoining a residence or a residential district. There is not an adjacent residential district. However, there is an adjacent residential mobile home or manufactured home park, which I am displaying here on the shared screen. There may be potential conflicts between the proposed use of this outdoor storage area, its functions, and the adjacent residential homes. As there is an undefined yet pretty much assumed 300-foot setback between the proposed outdoor storage area and the adjacent property. Staff didn't measure the exactness, but because they share that common property line, you could consider it to be a 0-foot setback. Code does not further define the term outdoor activity, so there's room for discussion and interpretation. So staff asks that there's further deliberations tonight regarding that term, and if this application meets the overall intent of what the use is and what this code is saying. There is a highlighted condition in the decision document specifically regarding this outdoor activity terminology that needs to remain. However, you can further edit this condition based off of the discussion here tonight. As far as for non-residential uses that have outdoor storage areas, they need to be screened from the adjacent residentially zoned property, either by a solid masonry wall or privacy fence. So that could include a vinyl fence or a wooden fence or an approved landscape buffer. The height of this wall or fence next to the residential property can be 8 feet tall. However, it would need approval by a design review as well as a building permit, but it can be 8 feet tall just because it's commercial next to residential. Additionally, there is the requirement for perimeter landscaping on this property boundary line, just given that it's commercial next to residential. If the applicant were to propose the required 10-foot perimeter landscaping, then the fence would not necessarily be required along that northern property boundary line if the commission decides that the perimeter landscaping meets the screening requirement in which the fence is intended for. If that is kind of confusing, let me know. Additionally, the applicant proposes fence along the frontage of West 42nd Street. A 6-foot tall fence is proposed and it looks to be on the property line. However, this isn't code compliant. Code requires that any fence within that front yard setback, which we're considering this the front yard of these two parcels, it needs to be 3.5 feet tall, or a maximum of 3.5 feet tall, until it is set back flush with a building. But because these two properties don't have a building, it needs to be set back at least 10 feet to get to be 6 feet tall, or just set back 10 feet in general with landscaping in front of it. So essentially a 6-foot tall fence cannot be along that property frontage unless it's set back 10 feet. And there has been a condition drafted for that. And as far as the rest of the non-compliant or may not be compliant staff report remarks, there have been conditions drafted for those. I just wanted to make sure they were highlighted in case the commission or the applicant wanted to discuss any of those issues here tonight. But with that, I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Veal. Any questions for staff? Commissioner Brown?
Mr. Chairman, Hannah. I understand it, and that's a really good picture. I would keep it available so when we discuss this thing, you can bring it back up. I'm very familiar with the site. I was the resident engineer that built the road and the retaining wall. And so I'm very familiar with the site. And so my first question would be about your presentation with regard to the fence on the required setback. does that apply to the fence that they would be required to build that or either or have landscaping between it and the residential, the manufactured home park? Is that right to that fence? Or just this fence that's along the road?
Commissioner Brown, if I understand your question correctly, so we have the frontage fence here on 42nd Street. There, if the sidewalk is required, then it would already most likely be put back 10 feet from the property line. And so it would just be considered the streetscape. So curb, gutter, landscape buffer, sidewalk, and then a fence line.
Then that prompts a further question. In the event that we don't require the sidewalk,
Mhm.
where would the fence have to be?
It would have to be 10 feet back from the property line.
Which I'm assuming is where that line, that fence is. Do we know that?
I don't know the ACHD right of way width here, as they have not provided comment.
Well, based upon my previous life, I'm pretty sure that that will be the property line. Go back to that picture,
Mhm.
please. Because you see where the fire hydrant is?
Yep.
That water line as well as that power pole, I'm 99% sure is in the right of way. It's required, it can be put in the, and so I suspect the right of way is also where the other fence on the, for the manufactured home park is. That's just a comment and that'll be in for future discussion. But now go back the other way, please. If in the event, now realize there, as you pointed out, there's a irrigation lateral. There's a box for it right there.
Mhm.
There's a water line where that fire plug is. And there is a power line that probably comes from across the street and then goes down the other direction. All of those, given that those are there, if we were to require a piece of sidewalk in there, where would the sidewalk have to be?
Well, from what I have seen, it would be standard distances and requirements until there is an obstruction, in which case it would have to swerve around that obstruction. So whether or not it goes back into the right of way, like per the usual, when the adjacent property doesn't have a sidewalk, you create an asphalt pathway back to the right of way. Or you go around it further into the property, in which case an easement would need to be granted to it.
All right, thank you. That's all. Questions?
Commissioner Brown? Any other questions for staff?
If, sorry, if I understand that whole conversation the right way, 10 feet back would be 10 feet back from where that existing chain link fence is. Does that sound right? Ish?
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Shepherd, any questions for staff?
I think Jen had.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Hannah, I do have a question. I have a question about the sidewalk policy because the way I read it, if the property is at a dead end, they're exempt from needing to put in a sidewalk. So is that retaining wall, does that considered a dead end? And if you said that, and I must have missed it, but to me, that's a dead end.
Commissioner Shepherd, yes, in all fairness, I do believe in my personal opinion that this is a dead end.
It's a dead end.
It's a dead end. However, I did mention earlier in my monologue that a lot of the streets on the south side of Chinden are also considered dead ends. So I guess my caution there would be, are all of the west numbered streets south of Chinden exempt from installing sidewalk because
Okay.
they're also considered dead ends?
Thank you. I remember you saying that and I was trying to make that connection. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Thank you. Jenna?
And Chairman, if I may, add slightly to Ms. Beal's staff report. She always does such an amazing and thorough job. But I think that there is information in the long range planning arena that may be helpful in your discussion potentially. And that's that one street over on 43rd Street. There's a connection up to Ustick that's in the city of Boise's ACHD and Garden City's long-range planning documents, to have that be a regional bike and pedestrian spine. And ACHD has received some funding to start working on that through the RAISE grants. And so that road actually does connect up to the bench. And I don't know if that would be helpful or not.
She's for it.
And just for clarification, if you were to jump out of the street view and place your new person, right, that's where we're talking about. So it's not theoretically in a dead end, it continues on and there is street frontage sidewalk, correct? On that, on Ustick and 43rd?
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct, and I can show street view from there. So the west side does not have sidewalk, at least directly across the street from the subject property. But as you can see on street view currently, and if you were to go out there today, the sidewalk and streetscape has been improved.
Thank you. Any further questions for staff? All right, hearing none, we'll open it to the public for testimony. Is there anybody in the public that's here to testify for this matter? Seeing none personally, we'll close the public testimony and we will allow the applicant to allow for any rebuttal or any additional comments if you have any.
Say thank you for hearing our proposal, and just to reiterate, we would be willing to provide the sidewalk, the landscaping, the fence of your choice. The chain link fencing, in addition to security, it's also more sturdy for when, they're moving stuff around in the outdoor storage area. They like to have that in case something hits the vinyl fence, it's much more willing to fall over or be damaged than the chain link. So just wanted to offer that.
All right, thank you. Any
Okay.
other questions for the applicant from commission?
So as we wrestle a little bit, at least, with the idea of what the term outside activity means, I'm reading from the application or resubmittal that says outdoor storage area will be enclosed entirely for safety and security by a perimeter fence. Shipment schedules would coincide with the 7 to 4 Monday through Friday hours, and describes all the things that might be stored outside. Can you give us an idea? What do you know, I guess, what the shipments would look like? Are semis rolling in here once a day, dropping off cool stuff next to the residential area?
I can't speak to the frequency, but there would be larger trucks bringing in pallets of sand, bagged sand, bagged salt, piping, other,
Frequency, the kinds of trucks that they bring those in on, are they?
can
box
somebody
trucks?
answer online
What's that?
can somebody on the Zoom call answer that?
Oh, so,
I can.
Okay.
thank you. Can you identify yourself for the record?
I am Ward Chase District Manager for the hopefully soon to be Boise branch of our SRS Distribution Heritage Pool to Spy.
Thank you.
Your question again, just so I'm
Yeah,
clear.
I mean, the question is, the code addresses the idea of outside activity, and I'm trying to get a sense for what kind of outside activity is going to be happening next to this residential area.
Most of the activity will be the deliveries as you're saying. The type of vehicles that you're wondering about would be pup trucks, which would be the smaller semis, occasionally the larger semis. But yes, they would all be scheduled, and it wouldn't just be happenstance. So there would be a schedule for those deliveries, sir.
And do you know, just generally frequency, are those once a week, once a day?
I anticipate, in full disclosure, I anticipate anywhere from 3 to 5 trucks a day. There will always be a delivery coming in or a shipment going out.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Commissioner Wild. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, well, hearing none, we will go ahead and close the public hearing and commence the discussion amongst the commissioners. Commissioner Brown?
Hannah, would you please put that picture that you had of 42nd Street up? All right, here's my thoughts are, thank you. My thoughts are, I like the application and I like what I think is a good site given what they're doing, what they're going to do. And I, for one, I'm gonna vote in favor of it. And I want to try and help that happen by suggesting the following. With regard to the sidewalk, I think we should say there's not going to be a requirement for a sidewalk on this. On the basis that this is a dead-end street, and it's always going to be a dead-end street, as you can see from what it is. And even if this redevelops the stuff to the north, and let's say that they even put residential housing and everything back in where the manufactured housings are. Any sidewalk that needed to come from Chinden would stop there for the people who are going to walk on it. The people that are going to frequent this business, they're not going to come here on this street. They're going to be on 43rd Street. Anybody that's walking, and it's already got sidewalks. And as Jenna pointed out, in the future, that's even going to be hopefully a better pathway access up to Ustick on 43rd Street. And so given that that's there, and not only that, if they were to put a piece of sidewalk in there, not only it would be hanging there and nobody would ever walk on it, I don't see how they do it with all those utilities in there, and it would have to go back on their property. So I think we should waive the sidewalk requirement on the basis that it's a dead-end road and not address that. And along with that, I would like to modify the landscaping requirements and saying that also I would say that it's not necessary to put in those trees at that point. If they want to, the others might consider this, we might put some kind of a condition in here that in lieu of that, that they look over with the staff the plans for the landscaping on the rest of the property. And they might want to put it, but leave that up to the staff. I don't see it enhancing that area down there. And I see the same problem in trying to put trees in there, because right underneath that is a water line. Now, the water line, it may end where that fire hydrant is, but we don't know that. But as there's, as a minimum, there's a ditch. Because Hannah pointed out, there's another box up there close to, in fact, you can see it up close to the retaining wall. So I think that we should delete the trees as a requirement. And let them talk to the staff about it. If the staff thinks it's necessary to add those trees back in somewhere else on the lot, then that would be all right. I think we ought to waive the setback requirements and enable them to put the fence right where that one is. And with regard to the fence, my preference would be to go ahead and get rid of the chain link fence. I don't see it if they put it, but make it so that their vinyl fence can serve the protection purposes by waiving that requirement that the fence along there be only 3.5 feet tall. Waive that requirement, let them put a fence in there as high as what they want to put it. And they're gonna have to have a requirement put in here very specifically to put a fence down between the mobile home park and that facility to serve as the separation between residential and the activities there anyway. So that needs to be worded that make it very clear that that's a requirement for them to put the fence in between the mobile home park and this facility. And that leads us, I think the only thing that's left is the activity, the outdoor activity that the gentleman talked about on the trucks. I guess we just waive that as a requirement, I think. That they're gonna have trucks coming in there, but they're gonna be, they told you what the business hours, there's not anything that's gonna be taking place late at night or anything like that. It's gonna be during the daytime. And if you go down in that whole area of Garden City, there's quite a bit of truck traffic in there already because of the type of activities that are going on in there. So I would be prepared. So you put all those together, I guess, and I've been broken up a little bit, then if we could put those in there, then I would be in favor of approving it.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Commissioner Wild?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will support Kent's motion when he makes it with, again, the additional condition that the outside activity including but not limited to deliveries occur only during business hours. I think that's probably safe to say that's going to happen anyway, but I would like to add that condition into those that Kent described. I agree with Kent on everything he said. I don't see any particular great value. Well, it's a dead end, so I'm not going to address that anymore. I agree with you on the fence. I think we can waive the setback and leave the fence there. I think if they want to take out that fence and put in a taller fence, that probably makes sense to secure the facility. So I guess all of that is, I'm supportive as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Wild. Commissioner Shepherd?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also agree with Commissioners Brown and Wild. I think the sidewalk is exempt based on the sidewalk policy. So I don't even think it's a waiver is needed, but we've already discussed that if we were going to do a waiver, we would do it. I would be in favor of that. I don't have anything else to add besides that. That's already been added here. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Shepherd. I agree with the fellow commissioners and don't have anything else to add except for a question on the decision document on whether or not we need to, in the motion, specifically address each one of the conditions that we're modifying. So for example, prior to occupancy, condition number 3 and 4, condition 9, and specifically regarding the chain link fencing can be remained if so desired, as long as it's within the property boundary. Is that correct, or is I guess it just depends on the motion on whether or not that can remain based on the applicant's desire or not.
Mr. Chairman, let's discuss that a little bit. I'm not. It would be my preference, but it seems to me if they really feel strongly that, I don't know, I would ask the other commissioners what they would think, or maybe whether we want to leave a requirement for them to take all the chain link fence down, or they can leave it inside their decorative fence. Seems to me that that's sort of redundant, but we might ask what. I think we can, in our discussion, we can include the staff, ask what staff, what their thoughts are.
Yeah, Jenna and Hannah, what are your thoughts on the fencing? If they were to put a decorative on the outside and keep chain link on the inside for really just protective barrier on the vinyl.
Chairman, my hunch is that the intent of the code is that the chain link is not visible. And so that would mitigate the visibility of the chain link.
So, yeah, we could work some kind of a condition then that if they desire, they can leave it in there for portions of it, certainly. All right, as long as they have the vinyl fences is as tall or taller than the chain link portion, right?
Right.
Yep. And then 9C would apply to Hannah and Jenna. Is that correct with the setback on the 3.5? If we were to set it on the property line?
Chairman, our sidebar over here is we're trying to make sure that if things are waived as suggested, that the commission is hoping to do, that we can get there in code. And we certainly agree that the sidewalk policy allows for the waiver. And because there's very likely easements that would preclude the landscaping, we can get there. The one thing that we're scrambling over here looking into code is if the height can be allowed beyond that 3.5 feet per code. And so we're looking right now to try to make sure that should this be your decision, that it's nice and clean and
Fence height.
the fence height.
Because of that,
Greater
it needs to
than
be that
3.5 feet.
10-foot setback in order for it to be code compliant, and then it could still.
Chairman, that's correct.
Okay.
I think I can make a motion that would include that, would leave it up to the staff to determine, okay?
And then, yep, and then modifying the site specific requirements for the use so that it is based on business hours. That's my
Right.
Okay. I'm in agreement. All right,
You want me to make a motion?
ready for a
Ready
motion?
for a motion? I'll give it a shot and we'll let our attorney over there, he's gonna correct me if I don't do this right, hopefully. All right. Now, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve CUP FY 2024 #2, including findings of fact, conclusions of law, and conditions of approval with the following modifications. And the staff will have to figure out what the numbers are because I don't have a draft of the decision document in front of me. With regard to the condition, with regard to the outdoor activities, that they be allowed as presented with a requirement that the deliveries occur during normal business hours for this operation, all right? That we waive the requirement for a sidewalk on 42nd Street. That we delete the requirement for trees on 42nd Street, and that the applicant meet with the staff and where they can make a decision if they want to include that in the other landscaping requirement on the site or a portion of it. That we delete the requirements for removing all of the chain link fencing. However, put a requirement in there that there be a decorative privacy vinyl fence in front of it that's as high or higher than where the chain link fence is, and specifically that be along the northern property line to provide for the privacy fence that's required between the residential properties and this applicant's property. That the height requirements for the fence along 42nd Street be eliminated, and if this, and that can be, I think it's gonna be 6 feet is what they're looking at of the fence that they would put in that place. If the staff determines that that's not possible because of code, then that chain link fence that is along there will have to come down, and that the higher fence that be set back in accordance with the code. I think that's all of that we said we were gonna change.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 No?
Point of clarification, or not clarification, I have a question. Yeah. So the code requires perimeter landscaping along that northern property boundary line. Are you requiring the perimeter landscaping as well as the fencing? Or just the fencing?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. I didn't include that because as I read it, the landscaping, if you put a fence in there, privacy fence, then you don't have to have the landscaping along there. I thought I read that the implication was if you have a privacy fence, then you don't have to have the landscaping to do it. That privacy fence suffices.
Commissioner Brown, it is the opposite of that. If there was the perimeter landscaping, then you would not require a fence. But if there's a fence, it would still require the landscaping along that northern property boundary line.
We want them to put the privacy fence on on property line, is that correct? Then I would include in my motion that we waive the requirements for the landscaping. I don't see a need to have that if they have a privacy fence, given the configuration of the property, that's not necessary. So I would waive that requirement.
And I seconded and I agree. So I guess that's an amended motion.
Yes,
Amended motion.
I amended my motion. To do that.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say
Aye.
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 No? The ayes have it. All right, you are approved. Yeah, thank you. Staff, any other?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, none by staff.
Thank you, commissioners. All right. We're adjourned.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good start.
Take care. Be safe out there.